Hello, Living Hope First Pres. It's that day again, Wednesday, our midweek devotional. Today I want to speak to you about the valley of the shadow of death. Let's reflect on the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Verse 4, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. That particular verse heals and ministers to so many people during a funeral. And I believe that's good. That's a blessing. However, that verse is not for people who've just died or lost someone. I mean, sure it is, but that's really what it's not about. It's a psalm of life. You have a living shepherd. You have living sheep who go through real valleys that are dark. A better translation of the Hebrew would be, though I go through the darkest of valleys. And it's a psalm designed for people like you and I, all through the centuries, and in the future if our Lord should delay his return. Real sheep following the Good Shepherd. We go through dark valleys. Real Christians go through dark, scary times. This COVID-19 is a valley. Sickness and disease, cancer, financial crisis, getting older, going through divorce, all these many different things are valleys, dark valleys. A valley is an impression into the ground. It's a depression into the ground, excuse me. So even as we might go through mental health issues, that is a dark valley. So there's so many different valleys that Christians go through. And the psalm is being honest about that. That sheep who are loved by their shepherd, who are secure and protected and fed by their shepherd, still navigate through dark valleys, depressions that go deep, like this COVID-19, the uncertainty of the future. But today I want to encourage you that the Good Shepherd is with you. Therefore, he could bless you, strengthen you, and grow you even in dark valleys that all of God's sheep, unfortunately, have to travel through. Going through dark valleys are oftentimes necessary pathways to get to God's preferred future, God's preferred reality. Dark valleys are necessary. They're unavoidable. God has good pasture for you. God has a preferred future, your own promised land. And going through the dark valley is necessary. That's one way to reframe a dark valley. On the screen, there might be appearing an example of a dark valley from modern day Israel and Palestine. These dark valleys were deep, deep in canyons, and sheep still traverse those canyons, and they're scary because you don't know what's around the corner. If the pictures are up, you can see how the canyons are vast, they're deep, and they're dark. There's a shadow in there, and around every corner, who knows what scary or dangerous thing could be there. But to get to places of refreshment, you have to go through these dark valleys. Next on the screen, if it's working, there should appear a spring, a oasis in what we call a wadi. A wadi is a term used for the Middle East where there's deep canyons, and because they're deep and they block sunlight, you can find water down there, rivers. And so you may have seen three images actually: the dark valley, shadowy canyon, and then sheep making their way through rocks and terrain that sheep are not used to traveling. And then it leads to a place of refreshment. And oftentimes God allows us to go through things that in general he may not want us to go, but he knows to form Christ in us or for our own growth. It's just a part of life. We have to travel. And sometimes it has nothing to do with growth. It's just life. I think every human being, whether they know God or not, travel through dark valleys. But at least as Christians, we know that our journey is not in vain. We're headed for places of promise. We're headed to God's preferred future. And the Lord is our shepherd. He's with us, guiding us through, walking with us through these dark valleys on our way to places of refreshment and renewal. In this life, evil is a reality. The Old Testament speaks of evil in two different ways, as evil as the absence of godliness, evil, like demonic evil. It also speaks of calamity, bad, dangerous times. I'm not sure exactly what form of evil David is referring to, but he says, I will fear no evil. I don't think David is saying that he's not going to be afraid, anxious, scared, because all you have to do is read through his Psalms. And there's multitudes of Psalms where he's saying, I'm afraid, but I'm going to trust in you. All kinds of enemies are all around about me. Help me. So David expresses in his songs multiple times that he's anxious. There's times where he's filled with depression. There are other times where he's pleading and begging God for help because he feels like he's dying. So King David certainly is not saying that he's not going to be afraid. What he's saying, he's not going to fear in the sense where he's immobilized, where he's frozen. He's saying, I'm going through the valley of darkness, but I'm passing through. I'm not going to be a sheep that collapses and stays because of fear, immobilized, stranded in the valley of fear. Unfortunately, there are human beings that stay in their valley. They pull a building permit and they insist that's the way their life is going to be, forever in the darkest, gloomiest of valleys. King David said, I will not fear, in the sense where I'm going to be frozen, immobilized, and just frozen and stuck in this valley. He said, I'm passing through. My shepherd will not allow anything in this life to destroy me permanently. Sure, we could get hurt, we get sick, we come near to death, and eventually we're going to go home to be with Jesus forever. That's the last verse. We will dwell in the house of God forever. But King David says, I will not be immobilized. I'm going to live life. I'm going to pursue and head for the destinies. My good shepherd is leading me down a pathway. He's leading me into pathways of righteousness. He's leading me to a table prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. He's leading me eventually to have my head anointed with oil. He says, so I'm not going to be so fearful where I don't do life, where I'm just stuck, no action, no following the good shepherd, the master. He says, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to fear to that degree where I'm immobilized and not even living life. God's rod also lets us know that we are individually known and cared for. Shepherds not only protected with that rod, they counted sheep with the rod. Let me read you two scriptures where the shepherds knew their sheep individually and accounted for them and counted them. Leviticus 27, verse 32. And concerning the tithe of the herd of sheep, of the flock, of whatever passes under the rod, the 1/10 shall be holy to the Lord. What shepherds would do is they would go into like a cave, which was like their sheepfold, usually built out of rocks, into these dangerous places, and they would have the sheep go under the rod. And what that meant is that they would count them. They knew all their shepherds by all their sheep individually. That's why Jesus uses the analogy: what shepherd, if he loses one sheep, won't leave the 99 in the fold and go look? Shepherds knew every sheep, and they counted them to make sure that a wolf or something had not robbed their sheep, that someone didn't rob the sheep. So they would count them every day as they passed under the rod. They'd also count them to leave 10% to God. Ezekiel 20, verse 37. I will take note of you as you pass under my rod. Now this is Jehovah God speaking. He's a shepherd. I will take note of you as you pass under my rod, and I will bring you into the bond of the covenant. That is so powerful. Jehovah saying, I'm your shepherd, and I'm counting you. I'm taking inventory. I know where you are, individual sheep, and I'm going to bring you into the covenant, the bond of covenant. A natural shepherd would make sure the sheep made it into the sheep pen, into the sheepfold, and God's saying, you are going into my covenant. You're going to bond in my covenant. I have an everlasting covenant with you. I know you, where you lie down. I know where you travel. I'm protecting you. And my rod not only protects you, it assures you that I count you. I'm aware of you. I'm keeping watch over you. You are mine in the bond of covenant, and you can never be separated from my hesed, unfailing covenant love. Living Hope, First Pres, I hope you have a good week. Jehovah God is your shepherd. Deep valleys scare us. They might even cause us anxiety, depression. But please know that we don't have to freeze, become immobilized, become paralyzed. We could follow the Good Shepherd. We could live like Christ. We could leave our homes with confidence. We could live this life and obey the Master and follow him to better pastures because Jesus is our Good Shepherd. God bless you.